Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my hope and prayer that this video is going to find you in good health. Personally, I'm fine and Kisumu is fantastic. Maybe you could let me know the country and the county you are watching this particular video from. Now, I want to begin this video by asking you guys to visualize Raila Amolo Odinga in your minds. What comes to your mind every time or anytime you visualize Raila Amolo Odinga? Because for me, anytime and every time I visualize Raila Odinga, two things comes to my mind. The first thing which normally comes to my mind is the scar on Raila Odinga's forehead. And then the second thing which normally comes to my mind is the handkerchief which is ever on his hand. Let me tell you the story about that scar, because it is related to what I'm going to discuss today. Most people have always assumed that the scar on Raila Odinga's forehead was actually inflicted on him either through a political process or during the struggle for liberation of this country. The truth of the matter is that that scar was neither caused by Moi or through political chaos, but it was caused by an accident. Raila Odinga once narrated that he was traveling from Nairobi with some professor. I think it was the late Professor Joseph Ogutu, and they were traveling from Nairobi. So after that passed Kericho, their vehicle rolled 4 times, and that what caused that injury. By that time, he was still teaching at the University of Nairobi, and I think Professor Ogutu, Joseph Ogutu, I think, he was coming from Ugenya, was a lecturer also at the same university, but he had been suspended because the government had put, he had actually resigned because the government had accused him of stealing some tires. So this guy got angry and he was traveling home with everything. Then the handkerchief on his hand, he once explained that that was caused. The reason why he keeps that handkerchief is because of the tears which keeps on coming from his eyes whenever he's exposed to light, because when he was in detention, the whole time was just dark. So every time he opens his eyes in light, the light is just too much for him. That's why he keeps that handkerchief to wipe the tears. So I'm giving you those two, the scar and the tears, because they are related. Most people always assume that that scar was inflicted. The truth of the matter is that since he began politics, serious politics, Raila Odinga security has been one of his key priorities. There has been so many attempts on Raila Odinga. He has always survived because of intelligence and because of people around him. And the question which I ask myself, how did Raila Odinga got himself in that situation he found himself in 2010, where people were actually heckling him and he could not even complete his speech? How? And again, how did he found himself in a situation where his chopper was actually stoned when he was headed there? What happened? I can only conclude that there are serious gaps in Raila Odinga's security details. And this must be fixed. And I want to ask around 4 questions. The first question which I want to ask is, where were Raila Odinga's advanced team? Because I want to use the case of E10 first. Where was Raila Odinga's advanced team? I've participated in Raila Odinga's political activities before. And at some point, we would be the advanced team. So we'd go to a place, survey, get any suspicious characters, just survey the environment and relay the information that this environment is hostile, this environment is okay. Then you'll figure out how to deal with those situations. I remember when Raila Odinga was in Eldoret last, and off cameras, I mean, on cameras, the rallies were huge. But a team, the team which had that, the Land Cruisers with the public address system, some of those guys were almost killed. They were telling me that they encountered hostile territory and these guys almost killed them. So where was Raila Odinga's advance team? And if they were there, I mean, why couldn't they relay that the information that the environment was actually going to be hostile? Because there's always a chance of shifting. I remember when Raila Odinga also went to Kiambu for the first time and the rallies were huge. There's a group of people who tried to do a similar thing which happened in Iten, and they were thwarted. So that's the first question. And were there, second question, were there intelligence information which were related to Raila Odinga? Because Raila Odinga currently is a top presidential candidate if anything happens to him. And that's why I found the statement by Rift Valley leaders to be reckless, that if anything happens to Raila Odinga, nothing can happen. If Raila Odinga was hurt in Eldoret, the truth of the matter is that it would have been assumed that William Ruto and his supporters, let me just put it, it would have been assumed that it's the Kalenjins who are targeting him. And you know what that can easily trigger? Tribal animosity, which is basically unnecessary. So the question is, were there intelligence report? Is there a chance that Raila Odinga ignored the intelligence report that he was told that the environment is hostile, but he decided just to go? Swala nyeti. Because Raila Odinga previously used to invest heavily on intelligence, and that's why he has survived up to this stage. Was he told? Because also, you know, Raila is also tough-headed. Sometimes he's told, don't go here, and he would always go. I was told that the main reason why he went to Kibor's funeral late was because of the intelligence report. He had been told that people had actually been planted in the venue to attack him and to embarrass him. So he decided to wait until after the funeral. But again, maybe these people still knew that it was coming anyway. So maybe he was given the intelligence briefing and he delayed, but again, the guys were also smart. The third question, who are Raila Odinga's local hosts? Who are hosting Raila Odinga, like in Iten? You know, Raila Odinga is the only leader in this country who has followers. The rest have what we call supporters. Followers and supporters are totally different people. Followers can actually die for your cause. Raila Odinga has people who are willing to die for him. I don't think William Ruto has such kind of supporters, such kind of followers. He only has supporters, people who can change anytime. Raila Odinga today is in Azimio. The next day he decides to go to UDA. Raila Odinga's follower will follow him. And that's why even Malala was acknowledging that the only person who doesn't ferry crowds is Raila Odinga, because Raila Odinga has fanatical followers, not supporters. A follower will always do whatever he is supposed to do. So in every part of this country, you must always find Raila Odinga's followers. And these are the people who, in most cases, normally host Raila Amolo Odinga. But since the Azimio la Umoja, since the handshake, a lot of things have changed. And nowadays, you see, in most cases, even brokers taking charge of Raila Odinga's programs. And I was reading a post by Wafula Buke. Let me just read for you so that you can understand. Let me just get my phone. Wafula Buke made some interesting posts, I think, after this incident. Let me see if I can get it. You can go to Wafula Buke's Facebook page. For those who can, because I don't want to run them on the screen because of time. Now, Wafula Buke is saying something very interesting about Raila Security. He's saying Algeria's revolutionary president, Hamed Ben Bella, dressed up in accordance to his revolutionary leanings. At first, he wore Marxist-associated military fatigue. Later on, his sympathies shifted to the Chinese version of socialism. So he adorned the Mao Zedong collarless shirt. Now I want you to listen. Internal political dynamics in Algeria shifted towards the right-wing ideas. So he wore a suit to endear himself to the West. This is what, I mean, this is Raila for us at the moment. The only difference is that he has been changing personnel instead of clothing. Wafula Buke is saying, which is very important, when he left prison, he relied on fellow comrades and they disbanded 82 Air Force people. Corporal Joju Tieno and some Kamba Army retrenchee Paul were drivers. In fact, his Kamba driver nearly got him killed in a road accident in Nakuru where 2 people died. So Raila is quoted as saying, I built up religiously after the accident. That's how I survived, Raila later told me. His chief operation director was Patrick Lumumba. He comes from my village there, ex-Air Force detainee. When he was briefly detained over Webuye by-election in mid-90s, Raila often lamented, if Owade was here, I would not be facing this ground challenge. Before Raila landed in your zone, Owade called all our allies to put them on alert. You know, Wafula Buke is actually one of Raila Odinga's troops, the soldiers. So like if Raila Odinga is supposed to go to Webuye in Bungoma, the first people they will always call are the loyalists. One of them is Wafula Buke. So he's saying they will always call him. Before Raila landed in your zone, if Raila is torn in your area, you will take personal responsibility. That's what he told me at 3:40 a.m. in 2007. Before Raila landed in Syria, I made sure I sat behind Raila's seat to be seen. Years later, Raila abandoned this brand of cadre as he also changed political course. He's continuing, what is happening in the current political situation is complete about time. His former jailers are in charge of his security, only backed up by new breeds of youth. So basically, Raila Odinga has changed a bit. But the question is, who are taking charge of Raila Odinga's security? Who were his local hosts? Were they supporters? Were they followers? Or were they brokers? The last question I'm asking on this is, where were the men in black? You know, these men in black are just people who are willing to die for Raila Odinga. And they are littered across the country. Whenever Raila Odinga is holding a rally, you'll always see some men in black. These are people who are just volunteering their services. But they have command. I know people like my friend Job, Matakwe, Bobimba, the Tall, several of them. These guys are just there, just taking charge whenever Raila Odinga is outside there. Apart from his official security, they'll always make sure that Raila Odinga is safe. They provide a ring around Raila Odinga. So the question is, where were they in Iten or even in Eldoret? Were they, is there a chance that they were never or they were not facilitated to travel? Because that environment was actually hostile. Which begs the question, what next for Raila Odinga? In my view, if you ask me, the first thing Raila Odinga must do is to ensure that more loyalists are around him. Some of them have aged a bit, but they are still young people who have taken the risk to support Raila Odinga. These are the people who should be entrusted with securing Raila Odinga. Whenever he's outside there, I remember sometimes during the last election, we were in some event in Meru, I think Meru, and the crowd, before Raila Odinga landed, we realized that some people had been sent to disrupt the rally. And I can tell you, the men in black did justice to them. And again, sometimes in just during this campaign period, these Azimio La Umoja campaigns, you know, Raila Odinga had started venturing in Mount Kenya region, but some people were keen on portraying Raila Odinga as someone who could not get support there. So when Raila Odinga organized the rally there, I was told by people who were there that a group of youth, I think the first rally, which was in Laikipia, for those who remember that rally, there are some youths who wanted to disrupt the rally and they were repulsed by men in black and by Maina Njenga's boys. So that's normally what Raila Odinga should be doing. Whenever he's he's going to a place, the men in black, loyalists must be around him so that these guys can tell him that, boss, it's not possible here. Let us postpone it or something like that. Number two, The men in black must always be facilitated around Raila Odinga if they have to succeed. This same men in black is the reason why ODM as a political party is still alive. If men in black were not around in Kasarani, I can assure you, ODM would have gone with Ababu Namwamba. Nobody assigned them, but they just realized that the party was going. So they kicked those ballot boxes. So ultimately, you can say what you want, but these guys saved the ODM party for Raila Odinga. So these guys should be facilitated. Raila Odinga should not rely, because I know probably some people are telling you, oh, you know, you are now with the President Uhuru Kenyatta, the security will always be beefed up, which is okay, but he must have his men in black. These people will provide shield. I remember during 2017 election, was it 2016? We were with Raila Odinga in Narok, and then serious wind started blowing. We were with Raila, we were with Kalonzo, and you know, serious wind started blowing. And I remember tents, you could only see tents, chairs flying all over. Everybody was looking for safety. Then I was surprised that Raila Odinga was covered by youths. Next to him was Kalonzo Musyoka, who was only with the two guys. And I asked myself, why was this possible? If someone wanted to do anything bad to Kalonzo at that time, they could have done. I think it was during the burial. There was this gentleman, Lekona, what was the name? There was a gentleman who was killed, and there was a serious burial. And I think there's even a road in Narok in his name. If I find the name, I'll put the name on the screen here for you guys. So for those, so that you can understand. So the men in black must be facilitated. Number 3, Raila Odinga must invest heavily in intelligence. I'm not going to go into details, but Raila Odinga is known to be someone who used to have a lot of intelligence. Unless he's ignoring those intelligence reports, but he must invest heavily in his own intelligence. Number 4, he must start working with loyalists. Ignore the brokers. And lastly, the governors are doing Raila Odinga a great service. Like, for example, he was in Elgeyo Marakwet. The current governor is supporting him, but he can't rely on the networks of those governors whenever he has a rally. Those governors will help him, but what happens where governors are not popular, like in Elgeyo Marakwet, or where governors are being targeted, like in Elgeyo Marakwet? So that's actually what is causing some of these problems, over-relying on governors instead of his own structures. Raila Odinga has structures across the country. There are people who are supporting Raila Odinga in Elgeyo Marakwet, for example. I know my friend Mika Kigen would have done a fantastic job and would not have witnessed this kind of thing where Raila Odinga is attacked. So I can conclude that there is some gaps in Raila Odinga's security. Those gaps, he must fix them before it's late. Otherwise, this election is going to be one of the hotly contested elections in this country. So he must be very careful. He must take charge of his security. Until next time, this is Lee Makwiny. Bye-bye, guys.